They were still pinning the boutonnieres when she stormed in, diamond heels clicking, invitation in hand, voice sharp enough to slice through vows. "This wedding is over," she said. Not paused. Not postponed. Over. The groom's mother had just canceled the ceremony in front of 200 guests, and no one, not even her son, knew why. Until a bridesmaid, pale and shaking, opened her clutch and pulled out the bride's journal. Page after page of lies, photos, and one confession that turned the mother's fury into silent grief. The secret wasn't just shameful. It was criminal. Now ask yourself, would you have married her? Some endings arrive in silk, not blood. The hem of her dress brushed the marble like a whisper she couldn't take back. Guests murmured. Wine glasses clinked faintly like nerves showing teeth. The string quartet played something light. Meaningless music made for people who didn't know they were moments away from memory. She stood at the far end of the aisle, still outside, veil pinned, but not yet lifted. Her fingers gripped the bouquet too tightly. White peonies. A bruise-shaped stain darkening one petal where she had crushed it. No one noticed. No one ever noticed until it was too late. Inside, they were still pinning boutonnieres. Laughter echoed. Faintly, the best man had made a joke about cold feet. The groom laughed, but not too hard. His cufflinks were shaking. He said it was the nerves. It wasn't. In the lobby, the mother stood by the guest book. She didn't sign it. Her hands were empty, no clutch, no shawl. Just the sound of her heels. Precise and disapproving, as if the floor itself had disrespected her son. She paused by the cake. 3 tiers. Vanilla fondant, hand-painted flowers. The top layer carried a name she hadn't chosen. She reached into her coat pocket. The envelope was soft, as if it had been opened and closed too many times. Inside was a photo, not recent. Faded and sharp with the kind of shadow you don't get from lighting. A child in the background, a girl in front. Her mouth open, caught. Mid-lie, she didn't look at it again. She didn't need to. The image had already branded itself into her. The planner greeted her with a bright, clueless smile. Almost time. The mother said nothing. She walked down the aisle, not toward a pew, but toward the altar. At the 9th row, someone turned. Then another. A hush began to ripple, not because of her entrance, but because of what her face didn't hide. The groom froze. "Mom?" She didn't blink. "This wedding," she said clearly, "is over." Gasps, first like coughs, then like thunder behind hands. The bride didn't move, not forward, not back. Her veil fluttered in the AC, as if something had exhaled behind her. One of the flower girls started crying, without knowing why. "She's just nervous," someone whispered. But it wasn't nerves, it was recognition. Children know when something isn't safe. The groom stepped down. "Mom, you can't just..." The mother lifted the photo. She didn't hand it to him. She turned it so the front row could see, and the silence inside the hall shifted like glass beginning to crack. The photo wasn't of the bride, not directly, but it might as well have been. A teenage girl in a red coat, a scar just beneath her collarbone, and the unmistakable reflection of someone else behind her, someone whose funeral was attended, but whose body was never found. The planner dropped her clipboard. The bride finally moved. One step. She didn't run. She didn't faint. She just looked at the photo and tilted her head slightly, like someone hearing an echo from far away. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was so quiet it felt wrong inside the mugged room. "You left it in your journal," said another voice, shaking, familiar. The bridesmaid, pale now, standing with a clutch in her hand that looked heavier than it should have. "Not everything you write stays buried." Another, the mic on the altar, picked up the sound of someone breathing too fast. The groom looked between them. "What is this? What is going on?" The bride looked at him then, not with guilt, not with fear, with something else. Like she wanted to apologize for something that hadn't happened yet. I didn't know she kept it, she said softly. Kept what? The bridesmaid opened the clutch. Pages folded, torn, some stuck together like they'd been damp once. She handed them to the mother. Page 14, she said. Read it aloud. The mother didn't. She didn't need to. She read it silently, and her breath caught halfway through. Her mouth opened. Closed. The page trembled. She handed it to her son. He read faster than he should have, slower than he needed to. His face shifted only once when the word witness appeared. And then again when the name Andrew followed it. The bride looked down. I didn't lie about who I was, she said. Only about what I saw. The guests were still. Nobody coughed. Nobody moved. Somewhere near the entrance, someone whispered, "This is a crime scene now." But the journal didn't just contain the past. It foreshadowed what still hadn't happened. The groom took a step back. Was it true? The bride's eyes stayed locked on the bouquet. The bruised petal had fallen to the floor. Most of it, but not all. I never said I was perfect. He turned to his mother. Why today? Why like this? Because I've seen that boy's face, she said. On missing posters, on news broadcasts, and now I've seen him in your fiancé's handwriting. A pause. She called it fiction, the bridesmaid added. But fiction doesn't have dates and addresses. Outside, the sun moved behind a cloud. Shadows lengthened. The string quartet had stopped playing 15 minutes ago. Someone's phone buzzed. It sounded like it was ringing from underwater. The bride stepped forward. She held her hands out. You think I wanted this? No, the groom said. I think you wanted not to be alone. She almost said it, the real reason. The night she didn't tell. The name she didn't say, but she stopped, because saying it would mean losing even the sliver of love left in the room. I would have married you anyway, the groom whispered. Even if I had known, she closed her eyes. That's why I couldn't let you. A murmur passed through the crowd like a second wind. If you believe silence can be louder than guilt, the next chapter will change how you see her. A woman. Near the aisle stood to leave. No one else moved. The mother turned, her voice no longer sharp, only tired. I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted you to know before the vows, not after. The groom nodded once, not in agreement, in surrender. Bride lowered the bouquet, laid it gently on the altar where the rings waited. She walked past the guests, one foot steady, one heel clicking out of rhythm like a broken metronome. The photographer didn't follow her. No one did. She paused at the door, looked back once, not at the man, at the mother. Their eyes met. A quiet exchange of something not quite forgiveness, not quite hate. She stepped outside. It had started to rain. She knew the wedding was over, but not which secret had surfaced. Truth never needs a microphone. It only needs paper. The night before the wedding smelled like roses and bleach. The suite had been cleaned twice, once by staff, once by nerves. Someone had left lemon water on the vanity. A robe was draped over the back of the chair, ivory silk with bride, stitched in gold thread, loose at the edges like it had been worn too often by someone trying to believe in the role. The bridesmaid let herself in with a key. She hadn't returned. She told herself she was just dropping off earrings, but her fingers itched with something else. Restlessness, maybe regret. The room was dim, lit only by the hotel's glow filtering through sheer curtains. She didn't turn on the light. Her heels were off before she crossed the threshold. Something about the room didn't want to be disturbed. She paused at the dresser, makeup bag zipped shut. A hairpin stabbed into a velvet cushion. The vanity mirror was fogged, though no one had used the shower. She tilted her head. Her own reflection looked older than she remembered. The earrings were still in her hand when she saw it. A small, linen-bound journal, wedged half under a bridal catalog. Pale blue, Worn at the corners, the elastic band stretched thin. There were lipstick smudges across the spine. She touched it like it might burn. At the moment her fingers brushed the cover, something in her stomach turned cold. She didn't plan to open it. She told herself that even as her thumb slipped under the elastic and peeled it back, the first page was blank. The second said, "This is not for you." But she was already turning to page 3, names, places, partial addresses. Some crossed out, some circled, doodles in the margins, nothing childlike. More like distractions. A page covered in shaky repetition. I only saw it once. Over and over, until the pen bled through. On page 8, a name she recognized. Andrew M., a last initial. A small drawing of a tree next to it. She had heard that name before. From the bride? From somewhere else? She read aloud, barely above a whisper. He said he wouldn't tell. I said I'd pretend I didn't know what I saw. I think he wanted someone to believe him. But I didn't. Not loud enough. A tear dropped onto the page, not hers. It was already there. Dried, but ringed. Like salt. She turned another page and found the photo. Old. Matte, torn along one side. A girl, teenage, maybe younger. Wearing a red windbreaker zipped up too high. Her face blurred at the edges like someone had tried to rub her out. But what stood behind her was clear. A boy. Half-shadowed, one eye swollen. A bruise under his chin. That wasn't quite yellow yet. And a hand, just a hand, reaching for him from outside the frame. The photo had been hidden inside a love story. But it wasn't love that kept it there. It was fear. She looked at the journal again. The next page was taped shut. She stared at it. Long enough to feel the room press in. Then a voice behind her. I thought I lost that. She turned, too quickly. The bride stood barefoot in the doorway, veil off, face bare. She wasn't angry. Just tired. Her arms were crossed, not in defense, but in ache. You read it? I didn't mean to. That's not true. The bridesmaid didn't argue. The silence between them was old. Familiar. Born not in this room, but years ago, under different roofs, with different names. You think I wrote that for attention? No. You think I made it up? No. Then. What? I think you wanted to be caught. The bride looked at her. Really looked. Not with scorn, but with something gentler. Sadder. I wanted someone to remember, she said. Even if it ruined everything. The bride stepped forward and picked up the photo, not with panic, but with reverence. As if it were an obituary no one else would claim. She slid it back into the journal and closed it. He wasn't supposed to be in the picture. Then why keep it? Because he's the only one who knew I didn't lie. The bridesmaid opened her mouth, closed it, then said the quiet part. He's the one who disappeared, isn't he? The bride nodded once. I saw the news, the bridesmaid said. I didn't know you were involved. I wasn't, the bride whispered. But I was there. Outside, a car door slammed. Laughter from the hallway. 2 guests returning from the rehearsal dinner. The room didn't hear them. It was holding its breath. I'm not trying to hurt him, the bride said. I love him. Then why hide this? Because love doesn't erase the past. And the past doesn't stay quiet just because you've dressed it in white. Some brides carry flowers. Others carry ghosts. Both wilt by morning. Bridesmaid stepped closer. What if someone else finds it? I was hoping you would. The emotional reversal arrived not with rage, but with realization. The bridesmaid wasn't the one exposing a secret. She was being handed it. Like a curse. I thought I was helping, she said softly, telling the truth. You are. Then why does it feel like betrayal? The bride looked away. Because it always does. If you've ever held a secret you never asked for, keep reading. What comes next belongs to both of them. The bridesmaid hesitated, then handed her the journal. Are you going to tell him? The bride didn't answer. She took the journal, wrapped it in the silk robe, and tucked it into her suitcase. She looked back once. "If I don't," she said, "he'll hear it from you." The bridesmaid didn't nod, didn't speak, just watched her leave the room, barefoot, veilless, and older than she was hours ago. She was alone now. The vanity mirror still fogged, on the bed. A single red petal had fallen from the bouquet, smudged by something that wasn't water. That photo didn't just end a wedding, it reopened a police case. You don't change your name to forget. You do it to disappear. The mother of the groom sat at the dining table, long after the candles had been blown out. The silver hadn't been cleared. The lace runner curled at the corners like it was trying to vanish into the wood. Her tea had gone cold. She hadn't touched it. The spoon rested diagonally across the rim like a blade left unsheathed. She stared at the screen, not blinking. The laptop's glow cast her face in blue, pale and unforgiving. It wasn't suspicion that led her here. It was instinct, the kind that whispers when everyone else is clapping. The bride's name glared back at her from the wedding invitation on her left. 2 names elegantly printed, but only one of them had ever existed in public records. The other led nowhere. No school records, no tax ID, no bank. Just a shell dot so she'd search deeper. Paid for a service that didn't ask why. The kind of search people usually run on cheating husbands or runaway tenants. What she found didn't feel like truth. It felt like falling. A different name, shorter, softer, with a middle initial she never once heard at dinner. She copied it. Pasted. Hit enter. A document surfaced, flagged, encrypted, partially sealed. Most of it was redacted, but enough peeked through to send a chill across her arms. A name change order. 6 years ago. Initiated by a federal agency, witness protection. The rest was blocked, but the note at the bottom wasn't. Subject provided primary testimony regarding a missing minor in sealed case number 8279. Relocation and identity change. Authorized for safety. Her fingers trembled not from shock but from recognition. That case number. She'd seen it once, printed on a news banner the day a mother collapsed outside a courthouse. She stood suddenly, knocking the chair back. The string of pearls around her neck snagged on the clasp and broke. Beads scattered across the hardwood, like whispers that couldn't hold their shape. Some women break in tears, others break in evidence. She didn't cry. She gathered the pearls slowly. One rolled under the radiator. She left it. The memory returned before she could stop it. 6 years ago, a grainy news clip. A girl hooded, face-blurred being ushered into a building flanked by marshals. A journalist said she was the last known person to see the boy. Alive, she wasn't named. Not then, not until now. It had been a story buried by time. A quiet horror that didn't sell ads. She opened the bureau drawer beside her, removed a small velvet box. Inside was a cufflink, her late husband's, gold, scratched, engraved with a date he once said was meaningless. That date was 2 days after the boy vanished. She clutched the box so tight, her knuckles whitened. Another she had always wondered why her husband left for a week that year, said it was business. Came back with eyes too glassy to meet hers. She pulled up the photo again. The girl in the surveillance video. The same slouch. Same jawline. She clicked open the bride's wedding registry, picture perfect. Images of plates and towels and wine glasses. She imagined those items neatly stored in a kitchen where silence would rot them faster than use. The bride wasn't building a life. She was camouflaging her flight. She opened her phone. Scrolled through text with her son. His words, his trust, his joy, and her reply 2 days ago. She's lovely. She reminds me of someone. Now she knew who. She could feel the betrayal swell in her chest, not of her, but of him. The kind of betrayal that doesn't yell, it whispers too late. If you've ever trusted someone who had too much to hide, The next chapter cuts deeper. She walked upstairs, quiet on the steps. The bride's old yearbook was still on the guest bed. She had brought it out earlier, trying to bond, flipping through photos with smiles that meant nothing now. She opened to the inside cover. Message written in careful block letters. To new beginnings. You deserve to be seen. And she knew. That name, she had just seen it. Andrew M., the missing boy. Her finger traced the ink. The handwriting was small. As if the writer feared taking up space. The emotional reversal struck. She'd thought the bride was climbing toward something. Now she realized she'd been crawling away. She sat on the bed. What did it mean to love someone who loved a ghost? What did it cost to marry a person built from witness statements and changed names? The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against the walls like it wants out. The mother stood again, walked to her closet, pulled out a locked metal box from the top shelf. Inside, photos. One of her son at 6, grinning with a missing tooth. One of her husband in a suit at a benefit dinner next to a man with a crooked smile she didn't recognize. And beneath that, a printout she had once meant to throw away. A news article. About the boy who vanished after school. Last seen getting into a car described as light gray, unmarked. Her husband used to drive a gray car. He sold it 6 years ago. She closed the box, locked it. Then from behind her, the softest voice. You looked it up. She turned. The bride stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding her shoes by the straps like they'd been hurting her all night. The mother said nothing. The bride stepped forward, slowly. I figured you would. Why him? The mother whispered. Why my son? I didn't choose him because he was yours, she said. I chose him because he didn't ask me to be someone I wasn't. And yet you still lied. I protected him. The only way I knew how. By marrying him under a name that isn't yours. No, the bride said. By keeping him far away from who I used to know. The mother looked at her, not as a villain. Not yet as family, just as a girl carrying too many names for one life. A silence opened between them wide enough to fall through. I don't expect forgiveness, the bride said. But I hope just once that I could live in a house without looking over my shoulder. Then, why did you keep the journal? Because forgetting doesn't make it not true. She left the room. Quietly. The mother stood, alone in the half-dark. She looked at the cufflink again. She wasn't hiding from a groom. She was hiding from someone in the front row. Every family has a drawer no one opens until it starts rattling. The drawer was small, shallow, tucked beneath old linens and receipts in the bride's childhood bedroom. Painted white, a chipped brass handle shaped like a tulip. Her mother once said it was meant to lock, but the key had gone missing years ago. Along with too many other things, the room hadn't been used in years. Not for sleeping, at least. Only for storing what no one wanted to see but couldn't bring themselves to throw away. That morning, the bride returned there alone. No ceremony, no veil, no lipstick. Just silence folding itself around her like a coat she forgot she was wearing. She moved slowly, as if the walls might notice. She knelt and opened the drawer. It stuck halfway. Like something inside didn't want to come out. She pulled harder. Inside were things no longer worth stealing. An old ribbon from a county spelling bee, a half-burned birthday card, a dried-out mascara wand, a note written in block letters. I told you, you promised. And a bracelet, red thread, handmade. One bead missing. She picked it up gently. It still smelled like dirt and mint gum. She sat back against the dresser and closed her eyes. The memory hit so fast it felt like falling. Drew had made the bracelet on a Thursday, 2007. He said red was for protection. He'd tied it around her wrist with a knot so tight she had to cut it off weeks later. I'll be famous one day, he said. But not the good kind, she'd laughed. He didn't. That night he didn't go home. Most missing children are remembered by posters. She remembered him by smell pine needles, old crayons, a bite of metal at the back of his teeth. They'd been close, not in the way adults assumed, in the way only lonely kids understand, held together by silence and secrets and the understanding that telling anyone anything might end it all. He saw something he shouldn't have. Said he'd tell. She said don't. He said, then it happens again. She said, not to us. He said, that's not enough. He vanished 2 days later. His coat was found at the river's edge. Shoes still dry. She never told anyone she'd seen him that day. She said she didn't know. She said they hadn't spoken in weeks, but she had. He gave her a flash drive. Told her not to watch it unless he didn't come back. She hid it. Not well enough. It disappeared. She told herself he took it back. She told herself it meant he'd come home. She never saw him again. The bracelet had been gone for years. She thought she lost it when they moved, but it was here in the locked drawer, the one that only her mother had a key to. The drawer didn't hide the truth. It preserved the shame. She heard the footsteps before she saw her. The mother. Hair pinned too tightly. Lipstick worn down to its final shape. You found it, she said, like she'd been waiting. The bride. Didn't look up. You kept it. I didn't know how to throw it away. Why didn't you tell me you had it? Because I thought if you remembered, you'd run. She stood. Turned. He was my friend. I know. You hated him. I didn't hate him, her mother said softly. I feared him. A pause, sharp as glass. He knew what your father did. A hush, heavy as wet paper. The bride's eyes welled but didn't spill. So you let him disappear? No, the mother whispered. But I didn't look for him either. A second, her mother stepped closer. Her hands were trembling, but not from cold. I was trying to protect you. You were protecting him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was stained. With every slammed door, every erased voicemail, every meal eaten in silence after that boy went missing, and no one asked why. I thought it was over, her mother said. I thought if we never spoke of him, the house could stay quiet. If you've ever been told silence keeps a family together, the next page will teach you what it really does. I thought maybe you forgot. I didn't. The bride held up the bracelet. He gave me this 2 days before he vanished. I wore it every day until I couldn't. She let it fall to the floor. Her mother flinched at the sound. Not because it was loud, but because it was final. There's more, the bride said. She opened her purse, pulled out an envelope. Inside, a photo, a scan of a page from her journal. The one the bridesmaid had copied before she handed it back. It had the name Drew circled in red, and beneath it, he said the camera would catch them. That's why they made him go away. She placed the photo on the table. I lied, the bride whispered. Not to protect him. To protect myself. Because I was afraid they'd do to me what they did to him. Her mother sank onto the edge of the bed. I didn't know, she said. Not all of it. You knew enough. A single tear slipped from her mother's left eye. She didn't wipe it. I was wrong. Yes, I thought I was saving you. You were saving your husband. The bride knelt, picked up the bracelet, placed it in the envelope, and sealed it. I'm giving this to the police. Her mother didn't speak. I don't know what they'll do with it. But I'm tired of holding it. Outside, the wind shook the shutters. A loose hinge tapped against the siding. Inside, the house was still. But not quiet, because this wasn't the end of the memory. It was the start of an answer. She didn't bury the boy, but she buried the truth. Some secrets don't get whispered, they get weaponized. The bridesmaid stood alone in the mirror-lit hallway outside the venue restroom, twisting a small silver ring around her index finger over and over until her knuckle turned red. She had worn that ring since she was 13. Since the hearing. Since the day everything changed and nothing healed. The music in the hall was soft, oblivious. Something classical, the kind that floats just above pain. Her dress clung too tightly. Around the ribs, a half-size too small, borrowed from a boutique she couldn't afford. She hadn't been invited to stand beside the bride. But she was here. And she wasn't leaving until someone looked her in the eyes and said her name without flinching. She took out her phone. The screenshot was still there, page 14 of the journal. The one she'd copied before slipping the book back into. The bride's luggage. One name circled, a drawing of a tree, and a line scrawled with shaky ink. He never told anyone. Not even her, but the ink told her everything. Because she knew how that handwriting had changed. She had watched it curl inward the year their bunk beds got separated. The truth was, the bride had been her closest friend in the group. Home, they shared socks, secrets, a hiding spot behind the old boiler where no one touched them. Where they made up names for themselves, names they promised to use when they got out. Hers was Ava. The bride chose Rose, but Ava never got adopted, and Rose did. On the day Rose left, she never said goodbye. Just disappeared with a new backpack and straighter posture. Like love had already started working. Ava had waited by the gate with a drawing folded in her pocket. She kept it there for weeks, until it shredded at the creases. She never drew again. She became the girl who knew too much. Not because she read everything, but because she remembered what everyone else forgot, like how the bride once told her, "If I ever get out, I'll lie. I'll lie so good no one will believe I came from there." Ava hadn't just remembered it. She'd lived inside it. She stared at the silver ring again. The first night they were placed together, the bride had given it to her. So we never forget we're real. Now it was just tight. A reminder that some promises don't grow, they constrict. She walked back toward the banquet hall. Guests were still buzzing, nervously sipping wine they wouldn't taste. The grooms. Mother stood like a statue by the bar, face pale with fury, too old to be just about today. Ava passed the coat room and paused. Reached into her purse and pulled out the flash drive. It wasn't just a copy of the journal. There was more. A folder she had hacked open the night before. Hidden images, letters, one audio clip. A voice, small, familiar, almost brave. She hadn't played it twice. If you think justice looks like a courtroom, the next page will show you where it actually starts. She put the drive back into her purse, zipped it half closed. Inside the hall, the bride stood by the cake alone. Her veil removed, her face unreadable, not guilty, not innocent. Just ... Ava approached. They stood a few feet apart. The guests quieted. "I was wondering when you'd come talk to me," the bride said, eyes fixed on the centerpieces. "I thought you'd pretend not to know me. I thought you'd pretend I was still her." "Still who?" "The version of me you believed in." Ava pulled the ring from her finger and placed it on the table between them. "You left me," she said. "I had to." "You didn't. I had to survive. That's not the same." The bride finally looked at her. Something softened behind her eyes. A crack, not a collapse. "I never stopped thinking about you." "Then why didn't you come back?" "Because I couldn't explain why it was me and not you." Silence ballooned between them. A waiter passed by, nearly bumped the table. The ring spun slightly, wobbled, then settled face down. "I thought you lied," Ava whispered. "That you made something up to get out. That you gave them Drew." The bride shook her head. Slowly, "I gave them silence. And they turned it into a weapon." A pause. "I didn't know what they'd do with it. But you never tried to fix it." "No," the bride's voice dropped. "Because I wanted out too badly." Ava clenched her jaw. "You got out, Rose. I stayed. I watched them bury him in memory." "And you, I wasn't chosen," the bride said. "I was placed. For testifying, for not screaming when I should have. You still got a family. They were strangers with patience. You still wore white. The bride looked down. I never wanted this wedding. I wanted to be someone who could deserve it. Ava stepped back. Her voice broke, not in volume, but in shape. Then why now? Why here? Why let them call you bride when you're still running? Because for once, the bride said, I wanted to see who would stay after the truth came out. Ava blinked. Her purse strap slipped off her shoulder. I didn't come here to ruin your day, she said. I know. I came to finish what you started. The bride didn't flinch. Then finish it. Ava nodded once. She turned, walked past the guests, past the shame, past the mother gripping a glass too tight. She opened the USB folder on her phone. She hit upload. To the press. To the police. To herself. She didn't come to stop the wedding. She came to finish what started in that group home. Some men don't fall in love. They fall into patterns. He was already at the estate when she arrived. The air felt wrong, too still, too rehearsed. The driveway curved like a question never answered, the gravel uneven under her heels. Her breath fogged the glass as she paused beside her car, and in the rearview mirror, her eyes looked like someone else's. He hadn't told her he was coming, but he'd always been better at knowing when something wasn't right, especially when it looked perfect. The house had been locked for years, but she still had the keys. He was waiting inside the foyer, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the table where his boutonniere had wilted. I wanted to see it, he said. The house, he said, never felt like home. She didn't reply. He stepped forward and gently touched the light switch, flicking it once, twice. The chandelier above them stayed off. I guess it still doesn't want to be seen. She set her purse down quietly. She knew what was coming. He wasn't the kind to yell. He asked questions with too much space between the word space that made the answers sting sharper. You could have told me, he said. I told you enough. No, he said softly. You told me what you thought I could handle. She looked away. I knew about the group home, he added. And about the name change. I knew about the sealed records. You think I didn't know who you were before I proposed? You didn't know everything. No, he said again, slower. I didn't know about Drew, or the orchard, or the locked room upstairs. She hadn't said the word orchard out loud in over a decade. Hearing it now felt like being dragged backward by her throat. I only found out because of your journal, he continued. Not the one the bridesmaid took, the other one. She turned sharply. You read it? I found it when I was fixing the broken cabinet in your closet. I didn't mean to, but I read the first page. And then I couldn't stop. Her knees weakened, but she didn't sit. There were things in there, he said. Things that didn't feel like a story. They felt like memory trying not to rot. She swallowed hard. There's more you don't know, she whispered. Then tell me. She paused, then shook her head. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. His eyes darkened, not with anger, with hurt. Try me. But some truths don't fit in words. They echo in places. And this house was already too full of echoes. She walked past him, into the hallway, down toward the back. He followed, silent. The floor creaked beneath their weight. Dust hung in the air like breath that forgot how to leave. They stopped at a wooden door. Plain, painted white. Brass knob, scratched. You locked it before we ever got here, he said. Double quotes, yes. Why? Because I was afraid you'd ask. She took a key from her pocket, inserted it, turned. The door opened. The room was empty. No furniture, no lights. Just a single window, painted shut and wallpaper peeling in strips like skin. But the floor had a stain, circular, faint, old. He stepped inside slowly. What happened here? I watched, she said. I watched him scream and they didn't stop. I wanted to run, but I didn't. I stayed. Who? She didn't answer. He walked to the far corner, bent down, picked something up. A button. Small, blue, plastic, faded. I tried to help, she said. After. but he wouldn't look at me. He just kept saying it was okay, that someone needed to be the one they used. A second, he turned the button over and saw the initials etched in tiny, jagged letters DM. She stepped forward, hands trembling. I thought if I stayed quiet it would protect him, but it didn't. No, she whispered. It erased him. The bride hadn't forgotten. She had memorized how to forget. He placed the button on the windowsill and looked at her. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I thought if you knew the whole story, you'd look at me like I belonged in it. He exhaled. I don't care about who you were. You should. I care about who you've become. She laughed once. Bitter, brittle. Who I've become is built on silence. I could have held your secrets, he said, but not your silence. She looked at him. Finally, like she didn't recognize him, like she wanted to. If you've ever loved someone who vanished inside themselves, the next chapter will show what's left behind. He walked to the center of the room. The air felt different there, thinner. I would have forgiven you, he said. All of it. Every lie, but not the quiet, she said. No. He turned back toward the door. This house doesn't creak because it's old. It creaks because it remembers. She stayed still as he walked out. She heard his footsteps down the hall. Then silence. She stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by wallpaper that didn't want to hold. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She reached for the button. Now alone on the sill. She was prepared to forgive lies, but not silence. Not all ghosts are dead. Some are on USB drives. The mother of the groom sat alone at the vanity in the bridal suite, hands folded too tightly. In her lap, the smell of hairspray and peony perfume still lingered in the air, two scents she had always associated with performance, not love, the kind of air that made a woman sit straighter and lie better. It was hours after the ceremony had shattered. The guests had gone home or scattered to corners of the estate, pretending not to gossip. The bride's things were still there. Lipstick on the rim of a teacup. A single pearl earring left behind on the tile. A laptop, half shut, humming quietly. She hadn't meant to open it, but some things asked to be uncovered without making a sound. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. Password prompt. She tried the groom's name first. Wrong. Then the bride's childhood. Dog. She'd remembered it from a conversation weeks ago. A beagle named Finch. The screen unlocked. The desktop was neat. Too neat. One folder. Unnamed. Dated. 2 months ago. Inside. 3 files. One titled, Letters I Never Sent. One was an audio memo, less than a minute long, and one was a video. The audio might have said enough. But curiosity doesn't aim for enough. It wants what can't be unseen. She opened the video. It was shaky. Time-stamped. Midnight. The camera sat somewhere low, filming upward, through a crack in a mirror. One edge of the frame was fogged, like someone had wiped it and given up halfway. 2 figures. One seated, back against the wall. A boy, the other standing, a man. The boy's hands were bound. Not tight, but enough to suggest a threat was made. His shirt was torn at the collar. He looked up once. Into the mirror. At the camera. He didn't blink. The mother didn't breathe. Then, a voice, not loud, measured, too familiar. Her late husband. I told you to keep it quiet, he said. Boy answered. And I told you I wouldn't. A slap, the sound sharp but distant, as if recorded underwater, then silence. Then a sentence that didn't just drop but detonated. She knows, the boy said. She saw you do it. The camera shook. As if someone knocked into the table. Then the man's voice again, closer now. She won't say a word. She knows what silence buys. And then the camera turned, accidentally or not, and caught a glimpse of someone outside the room. A girl, pale, frozen. The bride, the mother of the groom, paused the video. It wasn't the boy's scream that haunted her. It was the bride's silence. She sat there, Shaking, the screen still glowing with the frozen frame, she'd known. Her husband wasn't gentle. She hadn't known he was capable of this. Or maybe she had, just not in words. She was brave enough to use. She reached for the teacup, but didn't drink. Her hand stopped mid-air, because next to it, half tucked under the veil, was the USB. Silver, scratched. She hadn't seen it when she first entered. She picked it up. On its side, written in tiny Sharpie lettering, were the initials D. Mother Boy. She looked at the laptop, then the drive, then the mirror in front of her. And suddenly she realized the mirror in the video, the cracked one, had once been in their guest house, the one she'd forced them to sell after her husband's death, the one she never let her son visit. She inserted the drive. It was the same video, but longer. The final minute played without interruption. The boy stopped crying. The man stood over him, whispering something the mic couldn't catch. And then the girl bride, younger, trembling, stepped inside. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply said, "I'll do what you want. Just leave him alone." Her voice flat, hollow, cut deeper than the violence, because she was already practicing silence. If justice still matters to you, if buried crimes demand breath, what comes next cannot be unseen. The mother ejected the USB and held it in her palm like a live wire. She stared into the mirror again, behind her own reflection. She swore she could still see the crack from the video. "I should have asked," she whispered. "I should have asked sooner." The door creaked. She turned. The bride stood there. Her eyes were swollen. No makeup, no veil. Just bare skin and the weight of too many years. "You found it," the bride said. The mother nodded. "I wasn't supposed to keep it," the bride added. "But I couldn't delete it." "Why now?" the mother asked. "Because I needed someone to believe it before I forgot it was real." They stood in silence. "You knew him?" the mother asked. "Drew?" "Yes." "You tried to protect him." "I failed." The mother looked at the USB again. "This implicates him," she said. "My husband." The bride didn't flinch. "I know." "Why would you marry his son?" "Because your son is the only one who's ever looked at me like I could be more than a witness." A pause. "Even if I never told him what I saw." The mother gripped the veil on the table, twisted it like a cloth, bleeding. "I don't know what to do with this." "You already know," the bride said. Another silence. Softer this time, the kind that bends, but doesn't break. The mother nodded once. Then again, she placed the USB gently into her coat pocket. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about covering up a crime. Weddings hide sins better than funerals ever could. The reception hall still smelled like champagne and melting fondant. Rose petals were scattered unevenly across the floor like apologies no one picked up. The chandeliers were dim now. No one had turned them off. They just gave up. Guests whispered in corners, glasses half raised, waiting for someone to say it was okay to leave. The mother of the groom didn't speak when she walked in. She just turned the lock on the door. The click echoed across the room louder than any toasthead. Someone laughed nervously. "Is everything all right?" the planner asked, clipboard shaking. The mother didn't answer. She walked to the DJ booth and handed over a USB. Her hand didn't tremble. The DJ looked confused, then curious, then pale. "Play it," she said. The video didn't come with a warning. Just time-stamped silence and truth dressed in noise. The screen above the dessert table flickered on. Static, then motion. A cracked mirror, a boy, a man. A voice. The brides. A few people gasped. One dropped a fork. The groom didn't move. The bride was already standing near the window, her bouquet still clutched like it had roots in her wrist. The boy in the video flinched as the man raised a hand but didn't strike. Instead, he leaned in, whispered something, then turned toward the mirror, as if he knew the camera was there. The sound of a piano played in the background. Soft, faint, familiar. The screen went black. Then silence. Real silence, not the polite Kind. The kind that bruises. Someone near the back muttered, "What the hell was that?" The mother stepped forward. Her voice steady. That was Drew. The name hit the bride like a slap. She didn't fall. She didn't even blink. She simply sat down, slow, careful, like something fragile might break under her. "I didn't know there was video," she said softly. "You knew enough," the mother replied. "I was 14. That doesn't make him less gone." The bride looked down at her hands. She unwrapped the bouquet one petal at a time. The room was no longer a reception. It was a reckoning. The groom finally stepped forward. His voice cracked only once. "Is it true?" The bride nodded, then shook her head, then nodded. Again. "I didn't lie," she said, "but I didn't say everything." He waited. Everyone waited. She stood. The petals spilled from her palms. "I didn't film it," she said. "I didn't even know the camera was there." "He did, Drew. He set it up. He told me if anything ever happened, it would prove he wasn't lying." She looked at the screen, now dark again. "I never thought it would resurface." "And yet," the mother said, "you planned to marry my son, because I thought silence could finally mean peace." A soft cry came from the back row. "The planner, maybe. Or the florist." The bride kept speaking. "He gave me the USB before he disappeared. I hid it, but someone found it. Took it. I thought it was gone, until I found it again. Last week." The groom stepped closer. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to know who your father really was." He stood still. The lie wasn't the silence, it was the reason for it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet ribbon, torn, frayed. It had once held the USB shut. "He gave me this too," she whispered. "Said it would be safer in my hands." She looked at the mother. It wasn't. The DJ cleared his throat suddenly. Everyone turned. I know that song," he said. No one moved. He stepped around his table, removed his headphones, and stared at the frozen black screen. "I know that music, from the video." The groom frowned. "How?" "I used to work security," the DJ said. "A juvenile facility outside Akron, years ago." "Why does that matter?" someone whispered. He kept staring, as if the screen could hear him. "That piano piece," he said. "It played every morning at roll call. They piped it through the speakers." He looked at the bride. Drew was there. "I remember his face." The DJ's voice dropped. "He asked to leave a message once. Said it needed to go to someone named Rose. They shut him up. Moved him." The bride's knees buckled slightly. "I never got that message," she said. "No," the DJ replied. "You weren't supposed to." The groom turned to his mother. "You knew he was missing, but not why." "I knew," she said slowly. "But not this." "I need to sit down," someone said. No one looked. "If you think justice ends at confession, the next chapter will show you what truth demands." The bride walked toward the screen, stood beneath it, hands by her sides. "I didn't protect him," she said. "Not when it mattered." "You were a child," someone said. "I was a witness," she replied, "and I failed." The mother of the groom reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the USB. She held it for a moment, then set it on the head table beside the wedding cake. "No one leaves this room until we decide what to do with that." The groom stared at the drive like it might explode. His voice came quieter now. "Why was it hidden?" The bride answered, but her voice had changed, lower, cracked at the corners. "Because I buried too much in memory. And memory always wants revenge." The DJ nodded once. Like something clicked. "That song," he said. "They only played it before solitary." The room stilled again. He recognized the music playing in the background. He had heard it during roll call. The hardest confessions are the ones that would break someone else's heart, not yours. The rain had stopped, but the windows were still weeping. She sat at the far end of the empty bridal suite, veil folded like a surrender flag on her lap. Her lipstick had bled into the edges of her mouth, but she hadn't wiped it away. The room smelled like roses and wet dust, and no one had knocked in nearly 30 minutes. She thought she was alone until she saw her. The mother of the groom stood in the doorway, coat on, hair pinned, face stripped of ceremony. She didn't walk in. She stayed by the door, like she wasn't sure if this counted as trespassing or rescue. Neither spoke at first. Then, the mother, "I thought you'd run." The bride looked down. "I did, years ago. The confessions that matter don't always start with sorry. They start with surrender." "I want to understand," the mother said. "I don't think you do." "Then help me try." She nodded once. She pulled a folded napkin from her lap, white linen, lipstick stained. On it, she had written a list. 10 words, none of them complete sentences. A name, a date, a color, a location. A single phrase underlined. 3 times, "I was the bait." The mother blinked slowly, like she had to translate it into grief before she could process it. "You were 14, the mother said. Double quotes, "Yes. And he used you." "Yes, but not like they think." "No." She looked up now. Her eyes didn't plead. They steadied. "I wasn't the one who hurt Drew," she said. "I was the reason they found him." The mother stepped inside, slow. "Found him alive?" The bride's throat tightened. She didn't answer. The silence didn't deny the question, it wept. Around it, "I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid they'd silence me too. I thought staying quiet would protect him. But all it did was delay what they'd already decided." "You mean your father?" "Yes," she said, voice flat. "And your husband." The mother stopped walking. "I knew they were close," she whispered. "I didn't know how close." "They shared things," the bride said. "Power, silence, a house. And me." The veil slipped from her lap to the floor. "Neither of them picked it up. I didn't speak because if I did, I knew they'd turn it on me. I was a foster kid. A girl with too many names and too few people who cared. They would have said I wanted it." "You didn't," the mother said firmly. "I didn't. But you stayed." "Because Drew asked me to." Another. She pulled out a photo, torn at the edge. A boy in a red hoodie, half-shadowed, smiling but barely. His hand was in hers. "I stayed because he said if I left, no one would believe it happened. And now? I think he died believing I left anyway." They sat in the silence that followed like it was a third person in the room. If you've ever been asked to keep quiet to keep the peace, the next chapter knows what that peace cost. The mother looked at the napkin again. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to the last line. "If I don't come back, burn this." It's what he told me the day before they took him. "And did you?" "No," she said. "I kept it. I kept everything. Even after they buried him without a body." The mother leaned back, hands trembling. "You were the bait. I was the witness they let live." A long silence. "I didn't just hide the USB, she said finally. "I buried it in my father's garden, beneath the white rose bush." The mother's face fell. "I planted that bush, I know." "And your husband, my husband, he was in the video." "Yes. And you didn't warn my son?" "I loved him," she said. "Enough to lie to him. That's not love." "No," she whispered. "It's fear dressed as mercy." The mother stood. She walked to the mirror, stared at herself for a long moment. Then she picked up the lipstick from the vanity red, half-worn, and held it. "He gave me this once," she said. "I wore it the day I married him." She set it down. "Today, I wore it again." The bride watched her, unmoving. "I thought I was protecting my son from a scandal," the mother said. "But I was protecting the man who taught him how to hide. And me," the bride said. "You protected me too." "I didn't know. You didn't ask." A pause. "I'm asking now." The bride nodded. "I'll give you everything. But not all at once. Why? Because you'll need time to hate me first. The mother sat beside her. Then start now. The bride closed her eyes and opened her mouth, and almost said it, but the words didn't come. Not yet because saying them would tear something loose in the woman sitting beside her. Instead, she handed her the photo. He asked why I didn't speak up. She whispered. She replied, because I knew what it would cost you. Justice wears strange shoes. Sometimes. Stilettos. The bride didn't wear hers anymore. She had kicked them off 20 minutes ago, just before signing the statement barefoot on cold tile, trembling only slightly as her signature looped across the paper. Her handwriting was neat, controlled. The kind forged in childhood courtrooms and temporary guardianships. The officer thanked her quietly, not formally, just as if her silence had been loud enough to matter now. The pen she'd used sat alone on the bar, bleeding ink into a cocktail. Napkin. Her name now printed below a confession that wasn't hers, but had always lived in her ribs. Outside the ballroom, the rain had turned to mist. The DJ had started playing again, too soft. Too late. Inside, no one danced. The uncle stood by the cake table, laughing too loud. Polished cufflinks. A smile rehearsed. He had spoken earlier, gave a toast no one clapped for. Sighed he'd helped raise the groom after the father passed. Said blood was thicker than grief. He sipped bourbon. Clinked. Ice. Kissed the bride's hand earlier like he was sealing something. He thought the ghost in the room wore white. But the real ghost wore a badge and carried paperwork. The bride didn't speak to him. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She'd told them where to find the camera, where Drew had marked the wall in charcoal behind the mirror. She told them who used the orchard shed. She named the voice in the background. And she named the man who led the cleanup after. Not her father. His brother, the uncle. The first officer entered the ballroom wearing a black tie and badge tucked discreetly inside his jacket. He moved through the crowd like a guest who didn't know anyone, but recognized everyone. The second officer came in seconds later. Female. Heels. No hesitation. They didn't say his name. Just walked toward the bar. The uncle looked up. Smiled. Widened. His stance. You boys lost? They didn't answer. Just presented the warrant. The DJ stopped the track mid-beat. The sound clipped, like someone had cut a thread. The groom stood halfway across the room, watching, not moving. The bride gripped the napkin on the bar, not to hold, just to remember what letting go feels like. The uncle laughed again. You can't. Be serious, he said. Tonight? At a wedding? This isn't a wedding anymore, the officer replied. It's a scene. The music was gone now, but the memory still hummed in the walls. The uncle set down his glass, too calmly. That was always his power, staying composed in the wreckage he caused. You know what this will do to my family? He asked. The bride stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. You already did that. He turned to her, eyes narrowed. You always were ungrateful. I was always afraid, she said. And now you think they'll believe you? No, she said. I don't need them to believe me. I needed them to listen. He said nothing. He didn't resist when they cuffed him, but he did turn to the groom. You knew this was coming. The groom didn't flinch. I hoped it wouldn't. He said, then you're more naive than your mother. Another, as they turned him around, a silver key fell from his pocket. It clinked against the marble. No one moved to pick it up. The bride bent down and lifted it. She didn't keep it. She walked to the DJ booth and placed it beside the USB, still resting like a wound. If you believe justice always arrives in a courtroom, the next page will show. You the ones delivered in whispers. The officers walked him out. No shouting, no applause. Just slow steps across a floor that once held a first dance that never happened. Guests murmured. Some left, some stayed. No one dared approach the bride, except the DJ. I played it, he said softly. The music, I shouldn't have. You were part of it, she said. I didn't know, he said. Neither did I. He looked at the key. Then the USB. I worked that facility for 4 years, he said. They told us to play piano. Music to keep the kids quiet. Did it work? It kept them still, he said. Not quiet. She nodded once. The groom walked to her now, slowly, his suit wrinkled. No tie. You okay? No, she said. Want me to drive you home? She looked at him. This was supposed to be home. He nodded. They didn't touch, but they stood there together, facing the head table where no one had ever sat. She exhaled once. The USB blinked once. A red dot. Still alive. The napkin was stained now lipstick, ink, bourbon. Her signature had bled into the name Drew. The DJ resumed the track, but changed the song. The music didn't stop. It just changed keys. Grief writes better than guilt. She laid the cream-colored stationery on the mahogany table, a scarlet ribbon wound around it like a pulse. The desk lamp cast a small halo over the paper. She smoothed the edges with trembling fingers, dipped the black ink pen, and remembered, when she was 16. She found Andrew's locket beneath the floorboard, a tiny heart with initials so worn. Only memory could read them. Dearest Mrs. Matthews. The words appeared under her hand, slow and deliberate. She paused, listened to the hush in the room, the hush that carried his laugh, his cough, the night he pressed his palm to her side and whispered, "Promise you'll tell someone." She wrote, "I never wanted to be the last person who saw your son." The pen hovered when she reached the line about the orchard shed, the one he'd shown her under moonlight. He was brave enough to film the truth. Brave enough to believe it mattered. She paused again. Across the hall, the groom was packing. His suitcase lay open on the bedshirts folded in hospital corners, ties coiled like lifelines. Every creased fold was his attempt to straighten what she'd bent. Watching him pack felt like reading a confession he refused to write. She writes of a cracked mirror, a whisper in the dark where he called my name. She says he trusted me to keep his story alive. But the story almost died when I pretended not to find it. The bride's pen stuttered as she wrote about the night the police came, how she tucked the flash drive into her coat and left him in silence. She remembered the officer's eyes, empty of hope. The groom zipped his suit. He paused, glanced at her bedroom door, then returned to his drawer, removed Andrew's bracelet found in the drawer the day of the wedding. He held it, turned it over, saw the single missing bead. Since that day, I've worn his bracelet broken, incomplete because I needed to feel the gap in my life. She wrote of tears she never shed in front of strangers, of words she choked on when he asked her why she didn't speak up. She wrote, "I knew what it would cost you." She tucked the ribbon under the lampshade, cut it free, and tied it around the letter again, tight, protective, like a vow. Her chest ached as she pressed the stamp, the ink sealing a promise, not an apology. The groom folded the bracelet into a small box and placed it beside his cologne bottles. He picked up a framed photo, him and her at the rehearsal, roses in bloom behind them, and slipped it into his suitcase pocket. His fingers lingered on her face. She wrote, "I am not asking for your forgiveness. I am asking you to know I wasn't innocent, but I was never free." The lamp flickered. Papers on the desk rustled. Outside, the last of the guests had left. The house settled, as if in relief. She sealed the envelope. "If you believe words can still bring justice, the next chapter will show how they leave a mark no courtroom can erase." The groom closed his suitcase. He stood in the doorway, shirt in hand. Their eyes met, hers glistened, his steady. He stepped forward, laid the photo box between them. He didn't speak. She placed the letter in his palm. He turned it over, examined the scarlet ribbon, then the elegant handwriting. He didn't read it. He said, "I found this in your drawer." He held out the torn receipt of a locket purchase, her name in the store ledger. She swallowed. It was Andrew's. He gave it to me the day before. Her voice trailed. The letter waited. Some gifts arrive as questions, not answers. He folded the receipt, placed it beside the letter, and walked to the window. Rain had returned. The glass was streaked like tears refused. She watched him. Each breath he took was a line he couldn't write. The wind carried his name across the night. She remembered his warm palm on her back when the truth clicked her silence. Was his last lullaby. He turned with the locket and the bracelet. He didn't blame her. He didn't hug her. He simply said, "I can't love you today." She nodded. "Not yet," he added. She let him go. He moved toward the door, barely a flicker of goodbye. She watched the slippers he left on the threshold, white, untouched by mud, like hope, untouched by time. She sat at the desk, reopened the letter, and let the lamp burn low. His footsteps faded. Grief wrote the final line for her. I promised him I would not let his story die with him. She closed her eyes and whispered his name, Andrew. Some dresses are kept, some are buried. She stood before the rack of donated gowns, the plastic bag slipping from her shoulder. The dress she carried was ivory satin, silk lining still warm from her body. It smelled faintly of jasmine and despair. She unzipped the bag and let the dress fall, the fabric pooling on the metal bar like a white wave. She remembered the first fitting, how the seamstress had held the dress against her, said, "You'll glow." Glow turned to ghost. She stepped back, careful not to touch the hem. The donation bin loomed behind her, gray and yawning like a confession. A volunteer watched from a distance, folding her arms as if waiting for redemption. She took a breath. The satin shifted, catching the fluorescent lights. The pearl buttons down the back gleamed like eyes that never blinked. The volunteer approached, clipboard in hand, and said, "Is there a tag?" Her voice was gentle. Too gentle, like a question you ask dying things. She shook her head, unhooked the ribbon from the hanger, and laid it on the counter. No label, no name, just the dress. No registry attached. Only a promise once pinned to her chest, now discarded like a name she refused to keep. She glanced at the rack of hangers, empty except for the dresses she would never wear. A pale blue gown next to a sequined sheath. A dusty pink tulle that caught her eye like the color of bruises she hid. The volunteer nodded, tied the ribbon to the dress's loop, and slipped it into the bin. The drag of fabric sounded like a shutter closing. She turned and walked to the registry desk, where a guest book lay open, pens tethered by chains. She traced fingers over the names written in swirling script, Rose Harper and Michael Calloway. Each letter perfect, each vow unspoken. She paused at her own name, Rose Matthews, and the groom's Michael Calloway, hearts drawn between them. Hearts she no longer believed in. She closed the book, pushed it shut, and crossed out her name with a single straight line. Then wrote, beneath it, in her own hand, Amara Williams another. The final press of the pen on paper sounded like a gavel. She left the book open to her new name and stepped outside into the afternoon sun. The sky was overcast, but the air was still. She inhaled, tasted freedom and fear. Her heels were in her hand, now black leather, pointed. She'd worn them only once. Each step away from the center made her feet prickle with relief. In her purse, the napkin from her last encounter with the groom's mother trembled. The blood-red lipstick stain was half smudged. Like regret trying to crawl away, she reached into her purse, withdrew the napkin, and tucked it into the pocket of her denim jacket. A secret she would keep, buried in fabric, closer than any lie. She walked to her car, parked under a willow. Its branches swayed, brushing the roof like fingertips that remembered how to touch. She slid in, shut the door, and sat for a moment. The silence inside felt like a heartbeat. The willow had witnessed his last goodbye, how she said goodbye with no words. She started the engine. The needle on the fuel gauge hovered near E like a warning she'd ignored. She rolled down the window, let the breeze carry away the final ring of her wedding band. One silver loop flicked off her finger, tumbled into the grass dot. She watched it bounce twice before the blade swallowed it whole. If healing is about losing what weighs you down, the next chapter will show how light can feel dangerous. She drove down the empty street, past houses that didn't know her story, past windows that didn't see her mistakes. The engine's hum was steady, no music. She let the quiet fill her dot at a red light. She caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. No veil, no satin glow. Just Amara Williams' two names, one life reclaimed. A car screeched to a stop beside her. The driver lowered the window. It was the groom's mother. She held a bouquet of peonies, one petal fallen, crushed. She slid into the passenger seat without knocking. Amara didn't turn. She pulled away when the light turned green dot. The mother placed the flowers on the passenger floor. Her hands hovered above them, uncertain. "I came to say goodbye," she said. Voice thick, tremors in the lows like a shattered flute. Amara glanced at her. No anger, just emptiness. "Goodbye," Amara whispered. The mother nodded, tears glistening on her lashes. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small, wrapped box. "It's for you," she said. Handed it over. Amara held the box in her palm. It was light. Too light. She opened it. Inside lay the bracelet, red thread, one bead missing. The bead glinted like a heartbeat too faint to catch. Amara closed her hand around it. Felt its rough weave, felt the gap. The mother said, "I found it where Andrew's locket was hidden. It's yours now." Amara's chest tightened. "I see you buried everything," the mother said softly. "I buried my mistakes too." They sat in silence as the traffic hum filled the car. Amara leaned forward, switched off the engine. She opened the door, stepped out, left the box and dress, shoes in the seat. The mother watched. Amara walked toward the willow. She paused beneath its branches, pulled the ribbon from her pocket, tied it around a low-hanging limb. A white wave against dark bark. She touched it once and let go. She walked away without a veil. Only a vow to never lie again. Time doesn't heal. It rethreads. 10 years ago, they stood beneath an oak tree that was younger then, its bark smooth like unwritten pages. She tied a red ribbon around a low branch. "For luck," she said. He laughed. "For memory," he whispered. Now he sat at his kitchen table, nearly morning, staring at an ivory envelope resting beside his coffee no stamp, handwriting unfamiliar. He picked it up. His fingers shook. The wax seal cracked under his thumb like old bones. An invitation never lies. It only asks you to show up. He unfolded the stationery. The header read, "You are cordially invited." A civil ceremony celebrating the marriage of Amara Williams and Declan Murray. His voice caught, his name. He rested the paper, closed his eyes. 10 years ago he thought grief would fade. It had only braided itself deeper. He traced the edge of the inked names, felt the paper's weight lighter than his heart. He remembered her dress steam rising off the ivory satin, smell of jasmine and salt air. He rose, pushed the chair back so hard it scraped the tile. In the hallway, his mother's footsteps echoed slow, hesitant. She knocked once, then entered. "I saw the envelope," she said. Her voice cracked, but her posture was straight. Age had made her formal. He didn't turn. "I thought you'd want to go." He picked up the invitation again. "It's hers." "She asked for guests," the mother said. "But not you." He closed his eyes. "I believe her." She stared. He turned the paper to her. At the bottom, in pencil, "I believe you." No signature. She sat at the table. "Will you call?" He set the invitation down. No. Some invitations demand presence. This one demanded absence. He left the kitchen. In the living room, their wedding photo lay face down. He picked it up, flipped it. He stared at their younger selves smiling, innocent. He placed it face down. Again, he walked outside. The air was cold, smelled of wet pavement. He drove to the courthouse steps where the ceremony would be today. His feet climbed the marble stairs as if seeking closure. The doors were closed. She awaited him on the plaza. No veil, no guests. A single wooden chair set beneath a gray awning. She wore a simple white blouse and a skirt that fell like peace. She held a bouquet of white peonies, fresh, not wilting. No bridal designer tag. She saw him, stood. He stopped. A distance between them that felt neither near nor far. The wind caught a peony petal and carried it across the plaza, like a drifting confession. She walked to the chair and placed the bouquet on the seat, then stepped aside. He stayed on the top step, didn't move. If forgiveness is a ceremony of souls, this is the dress rehearsal. She stepped forward. You came. He shook his head. I stayed away. She watched him. No hurt, only relief. That's why I asked you. He frowned. Why? Because you kept a vow that I never heard. He glanced at the chair. The peonies quivered. I believed you, he said, when no one else did. She nodded. Then I wanted you to see. He took a single step down. Each step was an apology. No one spoke. He reached the chair. He didn't sit. He picked up the bouquet, held it to his chest. The peonies pressed against his heart. She folded her hands. He saw the red ribbon tied around the chair's back, faded, but still holding. I left it. Here, she whispered, so you'd remember why. He closed his eyes. I almost forgot. She stepped beside him. Time doesn't heal, it rethreads. He opened his eyes. The chair between them held the weight of 10 years. He knelt, placed the bouquet gently, tied the red ribbon into a loop around the wood. She watched his fingers knot the ribbon. Each twist another stitch in their shared tapestry. He stood, looked at her. I can't sit here. She nodded. I wouldn't ask you to. He turned away, walked down the steps. She followed. They reached the bottom together. No words. He stopped at the curb, looked back once. The chair, draped in peonies and ribbon, waited. Empty. Patient. She touched his arm. I saved you a seat. He stared, the ribbon caught in his coat pocket. A place where lies could not reach. He exhaled. And walked away. She remained on the steps. Rain began to fall light, unhurried, like finally forgiven tears. She stood tall, dress of memory buried behind her, and watched the ribbon flutter. She never expected him to come, but she saved him a seat anyway. Some children inherit truth, others, the silence that comes after. She was 6 when she first saw her mother cry. The year after the wedding collapse, she'd found her by the piano, pressing keys that made no song, tears glistening on the polished wood. She wondered then if sorrow had a sound. Now she was 11. The old oak desk in Mama's study gleamed in afternoon light. A single journal lay on top, bound in linen, locked with a brass clasp. She pushed her hair behind her ear, heart hammering like it remembered fear. The journal wasn't meant for her eyes. It was a door she had no key for. She reached out, fingertips grazing the cover. It shivered under her touch like a secret breathing. She lifted the latch. It snapped open. No warning. No consent. Pages flicked in a breeze that wasn't there. Scribbled names. A photograph tucked inside smudged. Almost familiar. She shivered. Mama appeared in the doorway, coat over her arm, eyes catching on the open book. Why is this here? The girl asked, voice small, echoing in the hush. Mama's mouth pressed into a line. She crossed to the desk, picked up the journal. I locked it, she said softly, closing the cover. I meant to keep it hidden. The girl remembered Mama's gaze when she'd told her to promise not to touch old things. They're just memories, she'd said, not yours. The girl looked down at the journal. Did someone hurt you? Mama's hand halted on the latch. She inhaled deep. It once hurt someone I loved, she said. That's why I buried it. The girl's brow furrowed. Is that why you changed your name? Mama hesitated. Her reflection flickered in the window. She sank onto the edge of the desk. The journal in her lap looked heavy. I wanted you to grow up safe, she whispered. Away from what I carried. The girl knelt beside her. But I'm your daughter, she said. I carry you. Mama's eyes glistened. She ran a finger along the linen cover. She paused at a tear in the fabric, barely noticeable, like a lie fraying. A child's courage often arrives in questions unasked. The girl reached out. Mama didn't stop her. She opened the journal to a random page names crossed out in red. Tiny circles around a boy's name. Who is he? The girl asked, tracing the ink with her fingertip. Mama's breath caught. She closed her eyes. That's Andrew, she said. He was my friend. The girl tilted her head. You. Write his name, but I never met him. He disappeared, Mama said. A long time ago. Did you miss him? She sounded puzzled, not sad. Mama looked at her. More than I can say. The girl pressed her hand against her mother's arm. Maybe he's here now. Yes, Mama whispered. Here. She tapped her chest. The girl remembered the red bracelet she'd found in Mama's jewelry, box one bead missing. She wore it every day to feel closer. Mama opened the journal. Again, thumb on the first page. She traced a line. I promised I wouldn't tell. That's a promise? The girl asked. Do secrets have to stay buried? Mama's lips trembled. She met the girl's eyes. I thought burying them would protect you, she said. But hiding truth can hurt more than words. The girl stood. Show me. She tugged Mama's hand, led her to a nearby shelf. Mama produced a small key, silver, tarnished. She breathed over it, warmed it, then inserted it into the journal's clasp. It clicked. She opened the journal. The girl's eyes widened. Pages of torn receipts, lipstick stains, pressed flowers. A photograph slipped out. The girl picked it up. A younger Mama, in a red windbreaker, holding a boy's hand beneath a willow. He's real, the girl said, voice catching. You knew him. Mama reached for her. I lost him. The girl peered at the image. Why didn't you tell me? Mama closed the journal. Because I thought silence would keep him safe. But it only kept me silent. The girl folded the photograph gently, placed it in her pocket. Can I ask one more thing? She said. Mama nodded. Will you tell me his story? Mama's eyes brimmed. She swallowed. I almost did, she murmured. But that story would break your heart. The girl sat on the desk. I can handle it. Mama's hands trembled. She sat beside her, journal in lap. She opened to the first entry. I was 14 when he vanished, she began. Her voice wavered. He saw something he shouldn't. I promised to stay quiet. I thought saving him meant silence. The journal's pages whispered under her fingers. But Mama stopped. She shut the journal. Not now, she said. Silence. Felt like safety once. I won't leave you unprepared. The girl's shoulders sagged. She reached for the journal, then hesitated. Can we read it together later? She asked. Mama nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in her eyes. If knowing truth is the first step to healing, the next chapter will show how words light the way. The girl leaned her head on Mama's shoulder. They sat in the hush that followed, two hearts stitched in shared grief and unspoken promise. Mama touched the girl's hair. A single tear fell onto the journal's cover. Silence settled around them like a breath held too long. She almost said the whole story. But this time, silence felt like safety, not for him. For peace, she returned to the orchard at dawn. The dew hung on the grass like breath held too long. The trees were older, now trunks gnarled, branches drooping with readiness, as if they'd been waiting for her return. She stood beneath the same apple tree where Drew had shown her the camera lens through a crack in the wood. The memory felt sharpened by time, not dulled. The orchard was where childhood and its secrets had first tangled. She carried a folded letter in her hand, edges soft from years of hiding it in her coat pocket. The locket he gave her, tiny, heart-shaped, hung from her necklace, warm against her chest. She closed her eyes, remembered the summer when his laughter chased the sunlight through the leaves. A single apple dropped from a branch overhead, thudding into the earth, an answer she'd never expected. The orchard gate creaked as she pushed it open. No one had visited in a decade. The path was lined with fallen apples rotting in place, their skins mottled and soft. She walked slowly, brushing her fingertips along the moss-covered fence, feeling the cool dampness seep through her fingers. Like forgiveness. She remembered Drew's hands, small and brave once, pointing at the sky, saying, "Promise me you'll remember me." She reached the spot beneath the tree. The grass was trampled here, not by visitors, but by memory. She knelt, touched the ground, felt the roots coil like old promises. The locket she wore pulsed against her heart. She unfolded the letter. Ink faded, but the words remained clear. "Dearest Andrew's mother, I'm writing this where he trusted me to keep his secret safe. I remember the night he whispered, 'If I don't come back, burn this.' My hands trembled when he handed me that ribbon, bright red against his white knuckles. The breeze stirred the leaves as if the orchard leaned in to listen." She read the rest aloud, voice soft, each line a confession laid bare. "I kept your son's story hidden in the folds of my life. I was 16 and too afraid to speak. I thought silence would save him, but it cost me my truth." Her voice faltered on the line about the locked room, where Andrew's breath had pounded against the walls like a plea. She continued, "I hid the USB, hid the photo, hid his name in ink that bled through my journal. I wore his bracelet every day until it frayed. I buried the red ribbon beneath the willow, where the wind would carry his name if I let go." She paused, eyes on the ground, where a single red petal lay, impossibly bright in the morning light. The orchard never forgot what was planted in its soil. She read the final lines. "I'm not asking for pardon or absolution. I'm asking for peace for the day my silence doesn't mean guilt. I wish I could tell you how sorry I was. I wish I could tell him one last time that I remember. I'm no longer afraid to speak his name. Andrew." She folded the letter, tucked it into the grass at the base of the tree. The envelope slid from her fingers, landing face down beside the red ribbon she had tied that morning. She stood, turned slowly, inhaling the scent of earth and apples. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the branches in gold. The locket warmed against her chest. If peace demands the courage to speak, sometimes it also demands the strength to leave words behind. She stepped back, reached into her pocket, retrieved the red bracelet, faded thread, one bead missing. She slipped it from her wrist, pressed it into the letter, the ribbon, and let the wind catch them. She watched them swirl, paper, ribbon, thread caught in a gust that carried them toward the sky. They lifted, then drifted down, settling among the fallen apples. She closed her eyes, felt the orchard's pulse, slow and steady, forgiving and resolute. She opened her eyes. No one else was there. Just the trees and the space she'd carved into time. She took a step forward, then another, her footsteps soft on the damp grass. The locket swung in a quiet circle. She walked away without a backward glance, no longer haunted by silence. Not for him. For peace.